All right, so this video represents, or will discuss, the continuation of the egotistic case studies. So in the first session last week, you guys looked at individuals who could be called radically egotistic. Most people would consider them radical egotists. These would be people that really only cared about themselves. The lives of other people literally did not matter. Only their goals, their dreams, their wishes, their desires counted. In the case of Adam Lanza, he was willing to kill people in order to accomplish his desires. In the case of Westboro Baptist Church, he was willing to show up at people's most vulnerable and emotionally difficult times, the funerals of their loved ones, in order to make his points. This week, the case studies are not quite as clear-cut. You can certainly make an argument that the figures in these case studies are egotistic, but you could also make counter-arguments, and so that's where it becomes really interesting, and that's where I'm hoping that the discussion boards just light up, because it'll be interesting to see the different approaches that you take. So, Razor Ramon. What is the story about? He is a WWE wrestler, or was a WWE wrestler. He was famous in the 90s as the character Razor Ramon. And the documentary really details his fall from fame. And so he's at the top of the pyramid. He's wrestling in front of 70,000 people. He's a main draw. He's being paid over $1 million. But then drugs and alcohol and just this kind of addiction to his ego, or his character, got in the way. He lost his family. He wasn't there for his wife. He wasn't there for his two kids. He was really an absentee father. So certainly those people, those closest to him, were hurt by his focus. Some would say his obsession, his self-absorption, some would argue, in these characters. And his addictions and his desire for drugs and alcohol. So I think the question is, was the addiction his fault? Should he have avoided these addictive substances? It talks about how his family was addicted as well. So he came from a family of addicts. Does that make him more or less responsible for the fact that he himself became an addict? Another, I think, really interesting question is, would it matter if he didn't have a family? So some that will critique him will say, look, the problem is he abandoned his family, that his kids grew up without a father, that his wife grew up without a husband, and his desire, his self-absorption in drugs and his need for drugs and alcohol and his obsession with his wrestling character is what led to his abandoning them. And you could make an argument that that is wrong. But what if he didn't have a family? Is he still wrong? Did he still hurt other people? Did he hurt the fans in any way? Did he hurt the organization he worked for in any way? Did the fact that he hurt himself, does that matter from a moral perspective? And so you can answer that. Yeah, The Rock of Ages, it is a very, very quick video. It's just a promo for a Broadway show entitled Rock of Ages. Well, I've never seen the show. The movie's pretty good. Lots of great 80s music. And, I think the kind of video and the promo, people are kind of joking around at a certain point. It does raise an interesting question. So what you have are people coming out of the theater and saying, I've seen Rock of Ages, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, and it continues to go up. It gets to be over like 100. One person says like 136 times or something like that. Now, are these people wrong? Are these people being egotistic? Are these people being self-absorbed? Is there anything wrong with going to see a Broadway show that many times? Many of you will, I think, the initial reaction will be to say, well, it's their money. They can do with their money as they please. But I want you to take that logic to its extreme. If that's the principle you would use to justify them, can you use your money for whatever you want? Could you use the money to buy a hitman to take out somebody that you don't like? If you use your money to buy heroin, or you use your money to sell heroin in the sense of gathering it up and becoming a drug dealer. If you use your money to buy child porn, would there be anything wrong with that? With the justification that, well, it's their money, they can use it as they wish, work. And then you have to ask yourself, who else could they have given the money to? And not only the money, but the time. So these people would be spending a lot of money on the show. They'd also be spending a lot of time at the show, and going to the show, so on and so forth. They certainly could have used their money for something differently. Some could argue that they could have used their money to help people directly. Should they have done so? That would be the moral question. And I think another interesting question is, did they help anyone? Did their going to the show, was it indicative that they actually cared about something other than their own desire to see the show? So again, all these questions would be relevant questions for you to think about and to consider with regard to this case study. The next case study is very close to home in the sense that it is the Newman Shuttle. And I'm talking here about the Newman Rab Shuttle. So the Rab Shuttle goes from the bottom of the Rab to the top of the Bachman Hill and goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it does so continuously throughout the day during the regular school year. And students get on the shuttle all the time, and they take the shuttle to the bottom of the hill, and they take the shuttle from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill. So that's what the service is, and you have to ask yourself, who does it help? It certainly could help those with disabilities. It could certainly help those who are elderly. It may help those who want to avoid, walking outside when it's bad weather. It certainly helps all those that want convenience, that don't want to walk up and down. But is it good? Is it good to offer this shuttle? Maybe for those that are disabled, but is it good to offer it for the general student body? You can ask yourself, is Newman promoting a lazy and entitled culture? I remember once I was walking out of Rab and going to walk up to Bachman, and I heard this 20-year-old young man, prime of his life. I believe he was an athlete, perfectly, completely fit. And he said, I am never walking up that hill. Is there anything wrong with that attitude? Does that promote a laziness? Does that promote an unhealthy lifestyle? Is Newman responsible for promoting, enabling a kind of entitled and lazy and self-righteous kind of attitude by offering that shuttle? Something to consider. Another thing to consider is that shuttle costs money. It costs money to put gas in it. It costs money to pay the drivers to drive it. It costs money in terms of the shuttle having to be repaired and wear and tear. So that raises, in some way, your tuition, maybe in a small way, but it raises the tuition for everyone because those funds to pay for the shuttle have to come from somewhere. And another moral question for you to consider, is it right to use, or is it right to raise the tuition for all in order to provide convenience for those that want to use the shuttle? All right, interesting questions, and again, I look forward to what you have to say. Okay, Kayne. So that's the last video for this week. Interesting video. He's on Ellen. Yeah, don't ask if I watch Ellen a lot. But anyway, he's on there and he kind of goes on this rant. And Kayne is obviously famous for these rants. But it's a really interesting video because he talks about his goal and he talks about how he is there to change the world. And, he's an artist. And the example he uses in terms of how he's going to change the world is clothing. And he says some people might mock this and some people might say that's trivial and that's unimportant and you shouldn't be, wasting your time on this. But he tells this kind of touching story about how when he was a kid and he was dirt poor and he just wanted some cool clothes to wear. And that would help with his self-esteem. And he says he's doing this, in part to help others and to give people that don't have a lot of money clothing that will help raise their self-esteem. There's no doubt that he's confident, or at least that he portrays a confidence in the interview. But is he egotistic? Is he self-absorbed? Is he concerned primarily about himself? Again, he's confident. I think it's safe to say that he's vain, that he might have an overly inflated opinion of himself. But is he egotistic, or is his primary motivation really to help others, to help improve their lives? So again, we've got 4 case studies, and think about it in the context of egotism. Are these people in these videos and in these stories egotistic? Are they focused on themselves? If they're focused on themselves, are they too focused on themselves? Or are they not focused on themselves at all? Or you might say, well, they are focused on themselves, but not to an immoral degree. So that is the material for this week. Enjoy it. I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and have a great week.